Howdy, y'all. Welcome to Talking Synths, episode 67. My name's Kenneth.
My name's Lucas.
And we're a little lonely at the shop today. Sam and Carlos are on a synth pickup trip, so me and Lucas were trying to figure out what we should talk about for the podcast today, and we thought that creative block would be a good topic to cover, and also gas.
Gear acquisition syndrome.
Yeah, so creative block, I think for me, kind of as a songwriter, I'd say the most important thing is I don't like to force myself to create. I don't like to put pressure on myself, like, oh, I've got to write a song today, or I've got to create a piece of music.
Right.
I like it to just happen, like strike when the inspiration is hot. But on the other end, sometimes it's good to just do it, just to, okay, go in with no expectations and just create something and see what happens. You may end up loving it, you may end up hating it, but
most of the time hating it.
But you're still doing something, and it's always a building block or a practice to onto the next thing. Maybe that piece of music isn't the one that you want to put out, or it doesn't strike your fancy, but maybe it'll lead to the next song. So I don't like pressure. I don't like feeling like I'm on a time limit, or that I'm not creating.
I'm like the opposite.
Oh, really?
Where, I agree with just doing things spontaneous, because usually when I'm editing videos and stuff like that, I'm very detail oriented, and I can keep a timeline open and have all the, kind of like how you could with a song, you know, you have all your layers and stuff. But when it comes to music making, I just, like, if I don't make something that I like within 30 minutes, I'm done.
Oh, man.
And it's like, it could be anything, whatever it is, experimental, whatever. I can't sit down and spend hours on a song. I can't do that.
See, I hate giving up on something. Like, usually, because if I'm creating a piece of music, whether it's more of an instrumental or like an actual song with lyrics, there's that initial thing that whether it's just like, I'm going to create a piece of music today, or whether it was some sort of inspiration from whatever, there's kind of that starting spark. And if I do something and it makes me feel good, I don't want to give up on it. And I'll run into some roadblocks, and maybe this bass line's not working.
Run out of sample memory.
Maybe I don't like these lyrics, but then I'll just kind of, I like to give things a chance. If I come up with a melody, let me record a bass part. Let me record some accompanying parts. Let me try to come up with a chorus and a verse, just to put it in the context of a song and see what happens with it, rather than come up with a cool riff or a lick that you like, and then you kind of hit a roadblock and you're like, I give up on it. I don't know. It's like, well, you're conjuring music from thin air. So
I say, because it's like, it's always good to like save your stuff, even if you think it's bad, or record it to some point, because there's always that weird initial like time when you make something that you think it's bad and you don't think it's good, and then because most of the time it is, but the rare like 1 out of 10 times that you make something and it is actually good, it's a good thing that you saved it, because then you're like, I made this, like, you know, and I've had that happen many times.
There's something there.
Something that's like 2 years old, and I made it in 10 seconds, and then I pull it back up and it's like, I don't remember making this, but it's good, so I'm gonna roll with it. But that's always fun to find stuff like that.
Something I've run into with other musicians that I'm friends with, when they're writing or something, they're like, man, I just can't do this, or I can't do that, especially with like singing or coming up with a melody or lyrics. It's like, it's easy to get your motor running. But for example, like right there, I just started singing Steppenwolf, Born to Be Wild.
The car inspired you?
Yeah, but I've heard that song 1,000 times on the radio. I'm very familiar with it. I can just snap the melody, like it's just there.
You know it.
Yeah. Whereas when you're creating a piece of music, it doesn't exist yet. Maybe in some capacity, someone else has used that same melody, but
Right. And that's why you got to be good at actually making music, or like knowing, because a lot of I think when people start making music, they kind of they hear it in their head, but they don't know how to get it out. So it's frustrating. So I think if you have an idea of how to play, that's why practicing
is great.
your songs, because even if it's just 4 chords or whatever, you kind of start to begin to understand why these things go a certain way and how certain people, a certain, I guess, pattern on a chord you could remember from a song, and then when you're improvising or coming up with something, you might use it
in a different context.
Right,
yeah.
and just because of practicing, you have an idea of what it is.
Yeah, and I think familiarity is a very important part to me, where I'll come up with a song, I'll come up with lyrics and a melody, and I'll record a little demo of it, and I'll just be like, man, I'm not feeling it. These vocals suck. But then I'll play it in my car throughout the week and be listening to it over and over again. And then I'm like, you know what, let me give it another shot on the vocals of this. And it's I know it now. I'm familiar with it.
You know what to change.
Yeah, and it's okay, now it worked. And kind of like what you were just saying, where I think another good tool to get out of a creative block is to learn other songs, learn cover songs. Maybe you don't want to play cover songs at a show, but you learn so much from, even if it's a really simple song, sometimes there's just a little thing that you'll learn that it's oh, that was cool. I'm gonna put that in my little bag of tricks for later.
And when you might even remember that stuff unconsciously.
Yeah, subconsciously.
And you'll just do it without even thinking about it.
Yeah, totally.
But practice, and practice.
Familiarity.
Yes. Another fun thing to do with creative block is to listen to something that you like and try to understand why it works. Maybe not with the intention of recreating it, but understanding why it sounds good. You know what I mean? And
Definitely.
A project that we're working on is kind of recreating some dance music or house music with an old sampler. And I was kind of going through all the old records and stuff like that, and a lot of those songs back then were really simple and really effective, and it's kind of nice to look back on that, because you usually get in that mindset where you think everything needs to be really complex, and you need all these, and then you get into that thing where you start stepping over yourself and you start doing things, and then you can't, and then you just you stop.
You're making music to try and impress other musicians instead of making something that's just fun to listen to.
And that's really what it's all about, is just having fun with it. That's why I said I like to make stuff, and then I just save the track in a live take, and then I just delete the project, and I don't open it for a year. And then when I find it, I'm able, since I've completely forgotten about the whole thing, I can't you get that weight when you start thinking of when you're making something. So it's it's like you're listening to somebody else's music at that point.
Definitely. And you go, oh, I did that. That's cool.
Yeah.
But going back to, like you said, listening to other music or listening to other artists, I think that can be very powerful. And if you hit a bump in the road, maybe you should try to find something new to listen to. Find a new artist that'll inspire you. Or if you have been listening to a whole bunch of new music, go back in time and listen to what you liked in high school.
Right.
Kind of do the opposite.
Or listen to what the kids are listening to now, which I don't know if I recommend, but
I think there's some good stuff
there
out
is,
there.
yeah.
But
you gotta look for it.
sometimes it's good to take a blast from the past and just kind of rediscover things, and it might spark some inspiration that you had buried. Recently, I guess I've been so busy building my live rig and stuff that I haven't been writing a lot of music, and I started listening. We were talking on the last podcast that I did with Sam about synth inspirations, and I mentioned Joy Division, and I've just been listening to Joy Division nonstop the past week. They're like one of my favorite bands to listen to in high school, and now I've just had song ideas. Just like I'll be laying in bed, and it starts popping out, and it's like, okay, cool. Here comes
Man, I
the
wish that happened to
inspiration.
me. Damn
You
it.
gotta take some of our advice.
Oh man, you just like set up, just like go in Ableton, you set up like 3 arpeggiators all in different settings, and then you just like, and then you'll hear something, and then you catch that, and then you use it. You know?
Yeah.
I can't like think of a melody. See, everyone's different. It's
Totally,
like everyone's
yeah.
different with the whole process. I guess you just gotta find what works.
Download a MIDI chord pack.
Yeah, yeah. I guess that's one way.
I see those YouTube ads for those all the
Oh,
time.
they're
and
everywhere.
They're
They're on
hilarious.
Instagram,
Yeah.
everything. I mean, if you
Alright.
just learn how like circle of fifths works, just Google circle of fifths. Or one more tip, if you're in creative block and none of these fantastic tips help you, I guess like, kind of lost my train of thought. Because that was
Circle of fifths.
limitation right there. I was hitting the creative block right
Well,
there.
limitation,
Yeah.
that's a good segue to go into that.
Oh, I remember now.
Okay, go.
If you get a new instrument, if you get something new, it can help break creative block. Maybe if you're using the same instruments and you get to a point to where you kind of hit a wall with stuff, maybe you should try the guitar, or maybe you should try to learn how to, use delay better in cool, interesting ways. That can help creative
Definitely.
block a lot.
And yes, like I don't play guitar. I'm just not
Yeah, I
good
don't
at
either.
it. But I definitely write on guitar a lot
Yeah.
because I'll just, the notes are arranged differently than they are on a keyboard, and I'll play things that I wouldn't normally play if I was writing on the keyboard. And I've had that happen a ton of times where I'm just kind of sitting in my room going plink, 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 and I'm like, hey, this is kind of cool. And then I'll translate it to the keyboard, but definitely it'll give some fresh ideas. But so we were talking about kind of getting new gear, and I think this is a good segue into gear acquisition syndrome
Yes.
topic. But like you said, sometimes getting a new piece of gear can be super, super inspiring. And but not only that, sometimes just taking some time with the gear that you already have and really learning what all it does. Like I've spent, when the whole pandemic happened, there was a ton of stuff that I had. I had one of those Boss vocal pedals that I got it, set it how I wanted it to go, and then I just started playing shows with it. And then I'm stuck in the pandemic, and I'm like, let me see what this thing can actually do.
Yeah.
Let me go through these settings and figure it out. And I've been trying to kind of go through each piece of gear that I have and really
get
learn
into it.
everything that it does, because one little preset, one little setting, one little function can really
Change
inspire.
everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm gonna do a song that does this.
Yeah, as an example is that I have an MPC 60 and I'm still trying to figure out all the little pieces on it. And I didn't know, since on each sequence on that, you have tracks. And each track is like a recording of a sample.
Okay.
And you can turn them on or off with the soft keys.
Oh, nice.
So you can do kind of like a live performance with that. And I thought you used to have to go in and like do it
Mute.
with, like type it in like a calculator on it.
Yeah.
And I just found that out. And I was like, that's such a great feature,
Yeah,
And-
I've also had inspiration from like listening to this podcast before I started working here. Carlos mentioned when y'all were talking about vocoders and stuff like that. He mentioned running drum machines and drums through vocoders, and I was like, oh, what a brilliant idea.
Yeah.
So sometimes other people, friends, fellow musicians, podcasts, like get that inspiration and take
not
it.
not even drums, you can do anything.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like anything.
You can run anything through a vocoder.
Yeah,
you can squirt
hopefully
a
that just
bottle
sparks
of.
some people to make some music right
You
there.
could squirt some mustard through a vocoder.
Yeah, you could sample it. Yeah.
Okay, gear acquisition syndrome. So sometimes getting a new piece of gear can be very exciting. It can be very inspiring. Sometimes you get hung up on it and you're like, well, I'm waiting for this new pedal to come out for me to do what I want to do, so I'm just going to sit here and wait for it.
And then when it gets here, I'm going to make some awesome music, and there's going to be no problems.
And then you're going to get it, and then you're like, well, now I kind of need to get this other thing to go with this.
Right, right. And then here's a whole list of functions that it does, and it make me a better musician. And then at the end of the day, you look back in your room, and you're like, do I really need all this shit? Like, is this even a...
And then you start selling some of it, and then, or you sell a piece of gear because you're not using it that much, and you use it to buy that new piece of gear, and then 6 months later, you're like, why did I sell that?
Yeah.
Now it's twice as much, you know? So my first tip would be, don't buy something just to buy it. And if there's something that you want to get and it has a certain function that you're excited about, see if you can accomplish that in other ways first. See if you can use what you already have to get a similar. I've done that before where I've bought something for a specific purpose and then 6 months later, I'm like, oh, I already had this other thing that could do that exact same thing.
Yeah.
And so don't buy just to buy, and don't sell just to sell. Like, oh, I haven't been using this that much, and I really want this new thing. Let me sell. Don't do that. Gear is really.
It's like
the prices are going up.
It's like a drug.
Yeah.
It really is, and it's like a human instinct of like trying to acquire the best new. I don't know, like there's something tribal about it, of trying to acquire as much good gear as possible.
And you see pictures of people with these cool studios, and you're like, I'm gonna do that. Which that's great, it is fun, but I almost sold my JX3P one time. I was considering it, just because when I was playing a lot of shows before the pandemic, I was very just plug in and go, not a lot of setup, and all about
music,
the least amount of setup on stage.
Yeah.
And like, I wouldn't bring my little JX3P module to a show because it's an extra thing to plug in. I'm just going to use the onboard Korg sounds or whatever. And I would do a lot of gear trading where, okay, I want this new thing, I'm going to get rid of this old thing. And I did that with the JX3P or 03 module that I had. I sold it, and then a year later I was like, man, I need that now. I need to get another one. So I've kind of completely flipped where I really hold on to everything, and unless it's just some huge bulky piece of gear that's just been sitting there for 5 years, I know I'm not going to use it. But I've gotten really kind of protective of my stuff now, and I don't like to get rid of it. And
which is good, because you've probably learned that you shouldn't sell things that you like.
Yeah.
You see the dollar signs, but then again, if you're not using it, do you need it?
Just really think about it. Just
there's two questions you can ask: do I need it, or do I want it?
Yeah.
And most of the time, you don't need it, so don't buy it. You know what I mean? But the people that wanted an OB8, have been waiting 20 years, have always wanted one. They know how to play, never come across one, and then they come in here and see one, and then they'll drop the money, and then it's like, okay, they actually know how to play. They know what it is. They can take care of it. But it's when you watch 5 or 6 YouTube videos on an OB8, and you're like, I think I'm gonna drop $7,000 on a keyboard. Yeah, and it's like, you're not gonna be happy if you do that. You might want to be careful. But it's just get a piece of gear that works and learn it.
That's good, yeah.
Yeah, that's all you need.
Yeah, really learn your gear and really think about when you're going to get a new thing. Do I really need this? Where am I going to be 6 months down the line? Same thing if you're selling a piece of gear. Just really think about it. And let's see, there was something else I was going to mention.
Could you hand me the water?
Yeah. So, this kind of ties in with creative block as well, with the whole gear acquisition syndrome. Gear doesn't make music. You make music, and gear is your tool to do that. And because a really good song, unless it's like an electronic instrumental song or something, but like a good song, you can play it with in a punk rock context. You can make a funk version of it.
Yeah.
You can perform it with a full band and choir and background instruments, or you can play it with an acoustic guitar and a vocal. Like, if it's a really good song, it's
regardless.
yeah, it's gonna be good. And gear doesn't do that. Like all the things we mentioned before about how gear can inspire you to create and stuff like that. At the end of the day, the gear doesn't make the music. You make the music.
Yeah.
And so it's really easy to get lost in just buying a bunch of gear.
It's like focusing on the easiest thing to do. It's easy to buy something.
Yeah.
And it's hard to learn how to play better.
And then you start procrastinating because you're like, okay, I bought these 10 new pieces of gear, and now I'm figuring out how to route them all and plugging them in and setting up my studio and then rearranging the studio. And then it's like, you're not making any music. You're just interior decorating at this point. So remember what the purpose of it is, you know. And I know everyone has their stuff that they like to do when they're creating music. Maybe it's you just like to make music for you in your room, and you like to just...
And there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
You could have 6 Juno 106s if you want them.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that.
Or maybe you do get your passion out of just buying a bunch of gear and plugging it in.
And sitting on it.
Yeah, I'm kind of coming from more of a songwriter standpoint of like I want to record music and put it out for people to listen to. But I know everybody has their own goals and reasons for doing music, but just don't get too lost in your gear. If you want to create music and write a song, you don't need a piece of gear to do that.
Yeah, I mean, you can make a song with like sticks and a rock.
Yeah,
Yeah,
like some harsh noise music.
Yeah, I mean, you could. I mean, but yeah, you don't want to go bankrupt buying gear all the time.
Yeah.
I mean, what's the point of that?
And then also, I think we kind of touched on it a little bit earlier, sometimes limitations with gear can really be inspiring, and you kind of challenge yourself to like, okay, what can I do with just a drum machine and just a polysynth? Or what can I do with just a guitar? And like you were saying, this like house music that you've been listening to, a lot of it is super, super simple.
Yeah.
Like, and just because a song is simple, that doesn't mean that it's easy. Like, look at
it's actually harder.
Yeah, look at like the Ramones or the Beatles or like Nirvana and stuff. Like, these are some of the greatest songs ever written and most rock and roll bands ever. And a lot of their stuff is like 3 chords. And it's hard to write a song with just 3 chords that captures the whole world's attention. And
it was like I was listening to Gary Newman, Cars. That's like super straightforward. It's not even, you know, you don't hear a bunch of crazy stuff going on. I mean, it's just...
It's meat and potatoes.
Yeah,
it gets to the point.
And that's the stuff that's really cool.
Yeah,
to hear stuff
don't
like
get me
that.
wrong, I love crazy progressive rock music and all, like, that all has its place too, but sometimes limitations can be really inspiring, and if you're spending so much time trying to write a melody that's super complicated just to be complicated, or you're trying to play in a weird, odd time signature just because you want to do it.
And the time signature is modulating.
Yeah.
So it's changing at times.
And it's like, okay, you may have done it now, but like, does it sound good? Are you happy with it? Did it do what you wanted it to do? And so things don't have to be complicated to be good, and things being simple doesn't mean they're easy. So sometimes limitations can be really, like, they help you figure out new ways how to accomplish things without overcomplicating things. Like, for an example, I've been performing solo, like, some shows this last year, and I'm kind of like the chord guitar video we did on YouTube. That was a little taste of my setup, where I'm using a looper and a drum machine and some synthesizers and sequencers and stuff, but the first show that I played with that kind of digital one-man band setup, I brought my own whole PA system. I brought 3 drum machines. I brought 2 keyboards. I brought my microphone, all my pedals, and all of this. It took me like 30 minutes to set up to play for 30 minutes. And then the next show, I thought, you know what? I'm playing at a bigger venue. They've got a pretty good sound system here. I'm gonna put my oh yeah, I brought 2 mixers to the show because I wanted to mix my own sound. Yeah, one was a backup.
Oh, okay, yeah.
But like that, I was literally bringing suitcases to this like little show, and
Less is more.
Yeah, so then I played a house party the next week, and I was like, okay, well, I have to bring my PA system, but let me see if I can do what I'm doing, but with 2 drum machines rather than 1 drum machine, or rather than 3 drum machines. And I did it, and it was great. I wasn't missing anything really.
3 drum machines.
Yeah, so then I played some shows at the Zach Theater in Austin, and they've got a great sound system. So I was like, okay, well, I'm not going to bring my PA speakers because they have the same ones that I have. So I'm going to leave it to the sound guy this time.
Yeah.
And so my load started getting a little bit lighter and lighter. And then, you know, I was like, I don't like having to bring a whole extra stand for this second drum machine. I know I've cut down from 3 to 2 now, but it would be nice if I could really do my whole set with just 1 drum machine. Because I had one kind of doing kick, snare, claps, more of the meat and potatoes bottom end of things. And my second drum machine was just for hi-hats and crash cymbal. And I would use a volume pedal to control it. So I did some digging. I looked into my little TR6S that I'm using, and I figured out, well, it's got stereo outs, and I usually use the mono out anyways, so why don't I hard pan all of the meat and potatoes stuff to the left channel and do my hi-hats on the right channel, and then that saves me an extra power supply, that saves me bringing an extra drum machine, saves me bringing an extra stand, and it sounds better, honestly.
Yeah.
So kind of slowly bringing less and less, limiting myself, figuring out what I can do with all of these pieces of gear and not have to bring a whole studio with me on stage.
Yeah.
It actually improved things, and it made it way more fun for me to perform. I'm not dreading having to get there 2 hours early to set everything up. So limitations can be very good at times, and yeah.
Yeah, I just, I've never gigged, and I'm sure people that are listening to this haven't gigged either, and I'm sure everyone who has their own story on something very similar to what you say about learning how to condense what you need and what you don't need to be able to travel, because, I mean, I can only imagine having something vintage and expensive and taking that to a show and performing with it. That's just wild to me that you would even think about that.
I took my JX3P to England for a month one time, and we played like 15 shows or something, and I played it one time at one show, and it was like, I'm never doing this again.
Yeah.
This is staying at my house. I'll use the little module if I need it, but downsizing is really good sometimes, and it can kind of inspire you to think in a different creative way. And
I think the best thing to do is just to make music.
definitely.
Stop thinking about all the technical crap. It's all crap. Just making
Yeah.
music. That's what it's about.
And even when you're like, okay, I'm gonna make a song. Like I said earlier, I don't like putting a pressure on myself, or like I'm gonna write a song today. Sometimes if I'm feeling like that, I'll just do something.
Yeah.
Do something. Like, and I guess what I'm trying to explain is like, a lot of the times I'll be like, I want to write a song and I want it to be like this, or I want it to sound like, I've got like a goal that I'm shooting towards. And sometimes you get hung up on that and you're not doing what you want to do. And in that case, it's like, just do something. Just create something else. Just, okay, you're doing a up-tempo, heavy kind of synth rock and roll song. why don't you try to do like a really slow ballad? Just
Yeah.
see what happens, or start going through your patches or your presets or your drum sounds or whatever, and just be like, oh, that's a cool noise. I'm gonna do something with that, and you may end up creating something that you absolutely love.
Yeah.
And if you don't, no harm done. Just on to the next one. So you only get better and better the more you practice, the more you're familiar.
Yeah. There's always somebody who's better at you playing, and there's always somebody that's worse than you at playing. So don't stop. There's only a place to go. So
Yeah, if somebody's better than you and it's intimidating you, take that as inspiration and a drive to do better.
don't
Be like, you know what, I'm gonna give up. Like,
Yeah.
my favorite comparison with like healthy competition is Beach Boys and the Beatles. Beatles put out Rubber Soul. Beach Boys were like, damn. Pet Sounds.
Yeah.
Beatles are like, damn. Sgt. Pepper. You know, so
Well,
like.
didn't Lennon and McCartney have sort of a competition?
Oh
with one
yeah,
another?
totally.
Yeah.
They were always trying to
Yeah.
write songs back and forth. Like John Lennon's like, "Oh, here's this Strawberry Fields Forever," and Paul's like, "Well, it's Penny Lane." I think John won with
But it's
that
like
one.
it's like healthy competition.
Yeah,
It's not like
yeah.
like a jab.
You don't want to
or
be toxic and negative in
Right,
any way, but
right.
I think healthy competition as a drive to improve and to do better is very good and very positive. And yeah, so just listen to music with your friends.
Yeah.
Don't
Don't listen to it to yourself.
Yeah, listen to music with your friends. Listen to it by yourself. Oh yeah, watch a movie. Like there's so many different things that like I'll be watching a scary movie and maybe it's the soundtrack or a certain color palette or a certain character. All of that stuff can be very inspiring.
Scary music is awesome.
Yes.
I really like scary music, and it's a really like a rabbit hole, because there's a few good artists that have made scary music, and then there's a few that are just like they've made like one album that's like full of like terrifying stuff. Like Aphex for his Selected Ambient Works 2 is like scary. Like there's like it is a wild album, and then it's like, how did you make that? Like that stuff, if you listen to different types of music, especially that are like out there, Philip Glass, maybe him not as much, but other artists that are more experimental, that can also help a lot too. But yeah, I think
it summed it up the best with like what you said is just make music, you
Yeah.
know, and pull inspiration from wherever you can. Don't let yourself get discouraged. Don't let yourself get too wrapped up in what these machines are and what the technology is. Like, just create and
it doesn't matter if it has 8 oscillators. Like that doesn't matter.
yeah,
Just
it's
make
cool.
music. Yeah. I don't want to hear it.
There's a time and place for everything. But
Yeah.
if you're feeling stuck, don't depend on buying a new piece of gear to fix that. You know,
Right.
like just keep going. Don't put too much pressure on yourself, and make something and see what happens.
So, all right, I think it's a pretty good wrap up with this episode, and I'd like to say that for our Patreon supporters, we have a Patreon for our supporters. It's Synthwizards, or patreon.com/synthwizards, and usually we put a lot of early access stuff to a lot of our videos, or maybe even first versions before the final. So go ahead and click the link down in the description and check it out. And with that, I think we'll go ahead and say
Modulator.